All right, friends. Well, welcome to another episode of ZBrush on the iPad. Today, we're going to explore hard surface modeling a little bit. Now, this is a car I did over the weekend. It's not 100% there, but this was done primarily, pretty much 100% with the new Zmodeler. We all love it, right? And yeah, put some perspective on there. Looks a little better. This was just me kind of going on the fly. Didn't have a real plan, and I'll show you the techniques I used to create this. You know, I wanted this to be kind of a quicker tutorial where I'm like, you know, here's something that shows the potential. I realize that, you know, there are a lot better cars out there. And you know, if I had a plan, or if you all were to apply your magic to it with the car modeling that happens out there on the desktop, I think you'd be able to find something special. You can see the back rear end here. I'm still working on fleshing that out, and you know, the wheels need a lot of work, but for kind of a stylized, simple cartoon, and as you can see, it's pretty low poly. You know, total active points are only 862, which, you know, I don't know why they do points as opposed to polygons, but it's pretty similar. Gives you a good idea of what you're working with. And then the total number of points is under 3,000, so, you know, pretty lightweight. And I'm excited to kind of show you how I got here. And so let's do that now, shall we? Okay. Jump on out of this project, and then we'll jump into a new one. New sculpt. Start with a cube, and per usual, let's see, how's my brightness? Let's crank that up. Per the usual, we're gonna go ahead and turn this into a smaller, simpler level of detail by either making it a QCube or a QGrid, one of these. So I'll just tap QCube, and if you'll recall, these numbers here will determine the ultimate resolution. So let's just go ahead and crank these all down so it's just the most simple form of a cube possible. And it makes you feel like you're starting in Blender or something, right? You can see I've got symmetry on, and it's literally just 6 polys. And so you can see active points, 8 points. So not too far away, that number from polygons. Okay, so first off, we're gonna grab our Zmodeler brush. I've got it added to my favorites, but obviously you can go to all and scroll to the bottom and find it right there. And you know, here are my selection modes. So if I pick polygon actions, you know, choose what we want. And so initially, this is how I started. You do you, but I was thinking, you know, car shell, and I wanted to delete some of these faces or polygons. So I deleted the front and the back and the bottom, so I've kind of just got this shell of a car. And this gets a little hard for me to see what's going on when I can't see the backside of polygons. So to make sure those are visible, you can go to your menu, make sure you're on tool, and then go down to display properties, double, and there we have it. Okay, so this technique I'm going to call Edge Extrude Modeling. Okay, so picking your edge, pick Extrude Move, and this is pretty fun. Whoops, looks like I undid my display properties. So essentially you hover over an edge and you just pull it, and it will kind of perform pretty predictably. You know, initially I'm pulling it out and I go in, it's going to taper it. You go too far, it'll make it into a try, which may be what you want. And then you can see it will snap sometimes as well. And it twisted on itself for some reason, but like if I wanted to fix this and plug it back in there, look at that, it snaps to the points. And so that's like a quicker way of doing bridge, for example. But for the car, for example, what I did was, you know, I pulled a piece out, kind of imagining that that's my windshield. And then I decided like, well, gotta add a little bit more something here. And, you know, I think I beveled that. I'm not gonna try to reproduce the whole thing. I'm just trying to give you a general idea. Got polygon delete mode on, so we gotta be careful there. We'll change that to do nothing. For some reason, it's super snappy today. It wants to snap to that bottom piece down there. But, you know, you can just start grabbing elements. You know, I've got my points set to move, so I can move those around while I'm going. I could come back in here, insert a edge there, and then maybe mess around with QMesh to pull out these sides here. And initially it's going to extrude, but if I hold down shift, it moves that whole face, which, if you're following me, you can see creates kind of a nice little connection here. So I could grab that and boom, those snap together. And now check that out, that's already looking pretty cool. Like maybe you want to build a spaceship or, you know, a mech or something. Well, you can do that. And if the snapping goes too crazy, just be patient and play with it a little bit. And then you may not get everything to line up just how you'd like it, but that's okay. We've got a tool for that. So if we go to stitch and then click on our first point and then our second point, stitches that together. Oh yeah. Bring this together. See, it's letting me get one point, but sometimes it won't find that second one. So again, we'll use stitch, and when you're stitching things together, the default is for it to merge to the end point. So, you know, I want this point to go here, so I want to click on this point first and then this point. Okay, and all of a sudden I've got like this cone, like it could be the front of a space shuttle circa 1980s and 90s, or I don't know, it could be a tent. Lots of fun things. But you know, then I'll just keep on fleshing things out. Okay, let's say that this is some kind of futuristic van type of thing. And you know, obviously if you're following some concept art, then it'll be pretty clear what you do next. But if you're not, and you're just wanting to free flow it, then it's kind of a way to explore and concept stuff. Sometimes it's hard to grab those points at the edge. You know, I've got QMesh that's wanting to happen, so don't be afraid to just grab your normal move brush and grab that point. especially when you're low poly like this. It's a great way to massage those points. And you can see if you snap to an orthographic view, you can be sure that the points are moving predictably. You know, check out my last video where I talk about, you know, precision editing, go into that a little more in depth. But it is important to be in orthographic mode. So, because if you're not, then you'll think, oh, is this not quite mirrored correctly or something, or you're grabbing the wrong stuff. So make sure you're in orthographic and then snap. You can hold down Shift to snap to the different views, or just click on your little 3D head up there. You know, this is kind of interesting. You know, maybe I decided I want to add some kind of ram air thing on the side of this futuristic van. And to do that, I can go back to my favorites, Zmodeler, pull this guy out, and then I'm gonna position it in a way where hopefully it's gonna do what I want it to do. You know, you could add more geometry into this to make it terminate in an interesting way, or you could just do it this way. And then this piece could be open. I'll show you rather than try to explain it. I don't know if, yeah, that didn't quite snap quite right. So sometimes you might need to undo that if you're too hidden. You're afraid. Okay, we got that point. Now I can move this point. I'm gonna grab and move this point into a position. Well, where it's going to be easier. So this is good enough. I'll go to Zmodeler, stitch, point, and now it's where we want it. Or rather than messing with that, you can always do the edge actions bridge and select one edge and then the other. And you can see the different coloration. That's just the poly groups. Certain tools will create a new poly group, but that can easily be unified or changed in any way. But yeah, back to the ram air thing. So what would we do here? Well, maybe we, yeah, polygon, inset this guy here. I think we've still got, well, no, QMesh, push that back. Oh. Here we go. So go back to gray mode, but you can see that we're getting some interesting shapes going. We could do this all day long, but the main thing is to introduce kind of the concept here, and then you can go crazy and explore some of this yourself. And then don't be afraid to delete what you've already started. So just because this was a big flat polygon and now I've got multiple polygons coming into play and it's not going to work quite right, well, that's all right. I can either just straight up delete it, or could try something like an inset. I'm going to go back to poly frame mode so I can see what's going on a little better. But yeah, so now I delete this polygon right here, and now this gives some geometry for everything to line up and terminate in a predictable manner. Come on, that's good, yeah. Sometimes stitch doesn't want to work right, and surprise, surprise, that's why, because you're trying to stitch it to something that can't be stitched because somehow I wasn't paying attention and I extruded some polygons there. So, whoop, try that again. Boom. So usually there's a reason if things aren't working quite right. Yeah, when you're mirroring like that, better to go to bridge. There we go. Bring that together. You can see some weird folding happening on that polygon up here, so you can get into your side view and play with that. These polygroups are getting a little out of control, so if you go to polygroups, group visible, for example, now it's all one color, and we can just continue to play with this. Insert that in there. So, kind of fun. And then, so this low poly process of essentially subdivision modeling, sub-D modeling, yeah, is well paired with the geometry dynamic subdivision. So if I click on that, you can see a preview of what this is going to look like when it's subdivided. And so if this is not the result you were hoping for, then fear not. Just means you need to add some more geometry to hold things together. So you can do that in sub-D mode, so it's up to you, or you can jump back in and toggle that off. And this may be too faceted as well for you, so you can pump that up a few more levels and then you're getting a really smooth surface. But let me see if I can't square this up a little bit. Let's turn off dynamic sub-D, and then let's add some poly loops again. Thanks to Zmodeler, this is super simple. Let's say we want to hold this line better, so let's grab an edge there. And just with that alone, well, let's add one to the nose up here too. Watch how much more squared off this will be when I hit dynamic subdiv. Yeah, look at that. So you're getting these kind of, you know, body lines happening. This is turned fairly circular, so we could square that up by adding inserting some edge loops. You know, let's go and add one in here. So see how it's tightening things, and it might be tightening things like right here that you don't want, but all that stuff could be adjusted. So let's say we're getting close. This area in here is too squishy for me, so maybe I'll add one in there. That just made it worse. Add one here. There we go. Add another one. Add one to this section. Yeah, don't know if I like that. So there's definitely ways to, you know, improve this Like for example, you could get in there and, you know, delete some of these polys and add some better geometry to hold everything together. If your edge loops aren't quite doing the job, here's what I was looking for. And see, it's hard to see where these are going to land when you're in this dynamic subdiv mode. But see, when we turn off polyframe, you can get a better idea of how things are going. Some areas are too sharp, some areas aren't sharp enough. And this is where you can then move over to kind of sculpting mode, but at this super low level. The only thing to be aware of, and what we're already going to have this problem here, but when we turn off dynamic subdiv, you know, some of these edges are super close together, which is fine, but it may get a little hard to edit, and it especially happens when you start sculpting, so it gets a little wonky. So let's say, you know, this edge is too tight here, but I like that it added some density there, so I basically just need to move these back. I could grab my move brush and find these handles, and see I'm grabbing two handles at once. So you might want to hold down shift and just touch it with the smooth to separate those a little bit. Give yourself a fall off. You can see you are sculpting, and so things might start to get a little squishy, which for, you know, hard surface modeling, squishy is bad, because then that means not hard, right? But like anything, see, it doesn't want to smooth on these two because they're outside of the geometry there. So maybe we'll try to grab, just move an individual point at a time. Oh, I'm just gonna merge those together for some reason. I think it's merging edges. So try do nothing, grab one of those. No, still trying to merge together. What if we turn that off? No. Well, sometimes you gotta get creative, but you can see those are extremely close together. Oh. Can I just grab the one point I want? Yes, you most definitely can, but it could take a minute. See, they wanna connect. So is there a attraction or symmetrical? If we put none, there we go. Yeah, that's the ticket. Okay, so that's what it was. You know, those settings, they'll get you. Turn this off, tell it to do nothing. Wow. Because especially when you're dealing with vertices or points, yeah, you're gonna accidentally click on an edge or a polygon all the time. So that's a great time to turn off your other settings there. All right, back to dynamic subdiv. So you can see this is staying tight. These areas are flattening out thanks to the magic of modeling. you know, that's the beauty of working inside of ZBrush, is you get the best of both worlds. You can do this hard surface modeling, but then you can also massage the geometry around like effortlessly. Some tools, you know, you're jumping in between modes, like that's a little annoying with Blender, for example. You got to go into sculpt mode to do some of this stuff, when I'd like to just stay in edit mode sometimes and do it that way. I, you know, had a comment recently where one of my viewers mentioned that he watches the videos at 1.5 speed and that that's a good speed for him. So do that, crank me up to 1.5, 2x, and hey, maybe my voice will improve as well. So that's a bonus. What is possible? And just to help us be, you know, more motivated, hopefully, let's go back to that car. So here's a real world type item that looks like something familiar. It still needs a lot of TLC, but heading in the right direction. So there you go, friends. Hope you learned something from this process that I like to call extruding edge modeling. And until next time, happy ZBrushing. We'll talk to you later.